Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Yesterday was the darkest of days for workers at Holden's and workers in the automotive industry around the country. We learned the devastating news that Holden had decided to cease production in Australia by 2017. 1,700 workers in Elizabeth, around 2,900 workers nationally. It wasn't an easy decision for Holden to make, I know. It was made a lot harder by the political controversy surrounding the automotive industry in this country. Deputy Speaker, this is going to have a knock-on effect to over 200,000 Australian workers whose jobs depend directly or indirectly on auto and automotive components around the country. The Australian automotive industry and transport industry represents about 8% of the total domestic steel volumes last financial year, with the number expected to have risen over the next 12 months. Of course, that is not going to happen. That will have a direct impact on workers in my electorate, in Throsby, in the Illawarra in New South Wales, many thousands of whom draw their employment through BlueScope and related industries. BlueScope Steel will lose at least $33 million in revenue every single year with the shutdown in GMH Holden. The Port Kembla Company supplies around 14,000 tonnes of steel worth about $18 million directly to Holden to make cars in Australia. The major component supplies to Holden buy an additional $15 million worth of steel from them each year. So, Deputy Speaker, you can see the impact of Holden's decision will stretch far beyond Elizabeth, far beyond South Australia and Victoria. Deputy Speaker, this decision was not inevitable. We were promised a government that would give us no surprises and no excuses. And yet here we are today seeing senior ministers within the government saying they themselves were shocked. They themselves were shocked. Well, if you looked at what has gone on in the chamber over the last week, nobody should be shocked by the decision that General Motors Holden have taken. Nobody should be taken. You have had senior ministers in the government opening the door and daring Holdens to work through it. Is it any wonder? Is it any wonder that it was very difficult indeed for decision makers here in Australia to convince their board in another country to keep backing the industry here in Australia? So far from no surprises, no excuses, what we've seen is the government trying to blame the workers, blame past decisions where the blame, to the extent that the government could have had any influence on this, rests fairly and squarely with the Cabinet and those who have been cheering for this change for decades.
I call the member for Page.